And hello, everybody, and welcome back. It is so good to be with you again. This is an exciting class. There's a lot of slides. So I'm going to kind of move through it and hit some of the high points I think you should know. But it really is great material. Project planning, quality, resources, comms, stakeholders, risk procurement. That's a lot there. Let's get started. Okay, so these are the learning objectives. Pause and review them at your leisure. Really, some project managers do neglect planning. Planning in any fashion in a predictive developmental cycle, which we also call waterfall, is disastrous because a predictive waterfall project is meant to defeat risks, to keep the project from falling into risks. And if you don't plan, you just invited risks. So that would be my introduction. Now, whenever we have planning processes for these, right? So we'll want to, of course, plan the quality management, and you get a number of outputs. Notice this is where you're going to decide on what metrics you're going to follow along the way. When you plan resource management, which also involves estimating how many resources you need on each activity, you are going to end up with an estimate of the resources. And notice a resource breakdown structure. It really is just like your work breakdown structure. It's hierarchical, right? But this time it's built just looking at the resources required in each box along the way. COM is one of the easiest chapters in project management, but do not take it for granted. You'll spend 90% of your time communicating to stakeholders as a project manager. So very important. Risk is so important that this is the whole concept behind a predictive or waterfall project, that you are out to minimize or eliminate risks to your project because you have a good grasp of the scope. You're fairly knowledgeable about what's going on. So this is essential. And then, of course, you can't make everything. And even if you can make it within your company, sometimes it's cheaper just to go buy it. Or maybe the resource is away right now working on a different project. So you might have to go to contract management for that. That's kind of a summary. So here you go, project quality management. Project quality management ensures that the project will, this is key, satisfy the stated needs for which the project was undertaken. That's what quality is about. Can we satisfy the needs for which the project was undertaken? And so that is really exciting to me. You know, quality can come in various forms. Your sponsors can define quality. Your customer can define quality. There are also formal definitions or characteristics of quality. The ISO 9000 series. ISO is an international regulation, I think sponsored by the UN, but everybody lives by it. 27001 is cybersecurity, the world I live in. ISO 9000 is all about quality management. So to be ISO 9000 certified is a big deal. The PMBOK guide, the PMI's guide, is ISO 9000 certified, right? I mean, it's an important thing, but it's another way to define quality. Also, you can define quality as the conformance to requirements, right? The customer has requirements, whether that customer was internal to the project or external, and have you conformed to them? Have you met them? Another measure of quality is fitness for use, or fit for use, sometimes we just say. And fit for use really just means if you don't want to over quality something. You don't want to build in more quality than you need, right? Because quality costs money. It's important, but don't overbuild, right? So build in just enough quality so that the object is fit for its use is the concept there, okay? So we have to start out like anywhere with quality planning, and in planning you will define all the rest of the quality efforts in the planning. This is a sample quality management plan. I like the way they do this. They lay out things that you would want to mention in your quality management plan, like the quality standards here, for example. Also, the metrics will be defined up front so everybody knows what you're measuring. And what about problem reporting, a corrective action, or supplier control, right? These are all good items to mention. You're the project manager. You get to decide what is in your quality management plan. But these are some good ideas, great starters. Now, a metric is a standard of measurement. So you're going to define what metrics are useful so that you can produce an item that is fit for the need for which it was requested. And that was going back to the definition of quality management. So some sample quality metrics might involve training, around the successful criteria, might involve, cost reduction, might involve a time element, or might involve a customer satisfaction. And of course, love to keep a dashboard. Dashboards mean transparency, right? Very good. Now, here's a sample project dashboard. You can pause and review it at your leisure. A lot of good things here to build on. And of course, another sample project dashboard. The book lays this out really pretty well. So some sample quality metrics, right? You might do a survey response rate. You might do a course evaluation, for example, right? There are lots of ways to do this. And of course, your quality manager you hire, one of the things you would want to ask is, what would be your approach to quality metrics on this project? Now, we then turn to resource management. Remember, resource management is hand in glove with schedule management and cost management. Schedule, cost, and resource management are the only areas where we estimate as project managers. So that's really the link between them. And of course, we all know, kind of a general rule of thumb, that the most expensive resource you have are your personnel, based on salary, overhead, benefits, administrative costs, etc. So you really want to focus in here both on skill level. You don't want to have more skill level than is required, because you're paying for that, but you need just enough. You might need one manager and 3 journeymen and 2 analysts, right? You don't want to have 7 experienced people as leaders in that discipline if you don't need it. It's costing you money. So you want to have the right skill level, which will impact your budget. But you need to make sure it's the right skill level, both for the quality that you're trying to achieve and to complete the schedule on time and within budget. So there's a lot to think about here. Don't forget, some may get bonuses. You have to account for that in resource management. Some may need training along the way. You want to account for that as well. Now, part of resource management is team management, right? So one of the things I love is to set up a project organizational chart, right? Let people know where they stand within the organization and let them understand the chain of events along the way. This would be a sample org chart or organizational chart. You'll notice the project sponsor, who the project manager reports to, right? And there's likely a steering committee and maybe a champion. Yay! Champion isn't really a term project management uses, but I understand. In fact, I would expect the sponsor to be the champion, to be honest. Of course, team leaders for the various knowledge areas like risk, scope, schedule, cost, communications, stakeholders, resources, etc. These would be your team leaders. And of course, you may have some supply concerns. It's a good organizational chart. You might even include testing in your organizational chart, or quality assurance, quality control, that sort of thing. Now, in resource management, the most common way to identify who the individual that's responsible for an activity, right? And for that we use a responsibility assignment matrix, or we call it a RAM. It's another hierarchical chart, right? Like the work breakdown structure, right? It looks like an org chart. Well, anyhow, let me backtrack and say the RAM supports the work breakdown structure, but it's really a matrix. It's really a matrix. In fact, we're going to see that here. This is the matrix. Here are the activities. I don't call them tasks. I call them activities because that's the term project management uses in the schedule. Those are schedule activities. So these would be activities, but tasks, I buy that. And these would be the people that you want to consider. And notice there are only 4 letters: responsible, accountable, consult, and inform. RACI. It's called a RACI chart, right? A RACI chart. The most common type of RAM is a RACI chart. So a RAM is a higher level, but a RACI is more commonly used, and this matrix is a RACI chart. So, and RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consult, and inform. So consider this. The research of existing training, you would inform Kristen. Jamie would be responsible and accountable. You would consult Muhammad, and supplier A would be informed. Okay. Notice there's only 1 R per row. You can only have 1 person responsible, again, I'm going to take a step back and say, notice there's only 1 A per row, right? A per each row. You can only have 1 person that's really fully accountable for that activity or task. There can be several R's in each row. This one doesn't show it, but I'll throw one in. You might consult, and they might be responsible for a portion. This one, let's see. This one might be accountable and responsible, right? So there can be several people responsible for producing something, but the one accountable is driving the success of this activity. And that's how you know who's in charge, okay? A resource histogram is used. It's really just like any histogram. What's a histogram? It's a fancy name for a bar chart, right? So it's a bar chart, but this time it just shows your resources, right? And this would be a sample of the type of resource and a bar chart on how they're used across the 12 months of the project. PMO resources, contracting resources, IT, supply or service management, HR and PMs along the way. So that's a histogram. This portion is a histogram along the way. The staffing management. So staffing management plan tells you everything you need to know about the resources on your project, who they are, what their title is, what their job description is, how much money they make, what benefits they get, how much bonus they get, what training they have, do they need any additional training, etc. Everything is in there. In fact, the staffing management plan is so thorough that sometimes people will call it the HR management plan or the resource management plan because it's that thorough. That would be a mistake because a resource management plan would want to include your other resources like equipment, like other materials, like infrastructure, etc. Those are all resources. But this one is so important. It involves everything about when they come on the project, when they leave the project, etc. It's really thorough, right? Really great. So here's a sample staffing management plan. You can pause at your leisure and go over it. Also in resource management, I like a team charter. A team charter is something that project management kicks off with the project team and says, how are we going to work with each other? What are our responsibilities to each other? And you let the team figure out how you're going to work together. You put that together in a team charter, right? That people, hey, if we have conflict, how are we going to deal with it? So we have a common understanding. It's a really great tool. So here's a sample team charter. You can pause and review at your leisure. Now, there are lots of ways to estimate activity resources, but those are really covered in schedule and cost management. Very similar along the way, okay? And of course, you're going to tie those resources to your work breakdown structure. as well. So here is a sample resource breakdown structure. Notice it looks like a work breakdown structure. It's a hierarchical picture, but this time it's only focused on your resources. Helps you organize your project. We're going to pause there and come back with communications next.